the Coolture Among Young People project is an Erasmus funding project that involves 5 youth organisations across Europe. So the project coordinators are in Romania, and then there's organisations in Italy, Poland, Bulgaria, and the UK. So we're the representative from the UK. And the main aims of the project is to engage and promote cultural heritage in youth. So encouraging young people to discover and explore their cultural heritage. So there's a number of different activities that are being implemented as part of this. So we're delivering activities and workshops with youth centres and with youth. The first one being a debating workshop where we're teaching young people skills in researching and debating and how to present their arguments. And we've centred this debate around the statues debate in the UK. So the aims to encourage a discussion about the statues' place in Britain's cultural heritage, and also what should be done with them, and if they are to be replaced, how to replace them, and kind of just start that conversation. Well, the conversation's been started already.
What's the final output of the project? What's the final end goal?
The end goal is the Romanian coordinators have this platform called the Cool platform, which is essentially where young people, youth workers can all access the platform and then work together on these different activities and different workshops to basically continue these discussions about cultural heritage and just generally engage youth more in culture. But I was just wondering if I could ask you a few questions about the People's Platform and just in generally what your project is.
Yeah. I mean, I think it might be good for Lawrence to kick it off and just kind of give you a bit of background to Cargo as an organisation, and that's kind of the backbone of what we're working on. And then People's Platforms are kind of an offshoot of that, of the bigger project. So, yeah. Lawrence, do you want to kick off with just a
brief intro to Cargo?
Yeah.
Yes, all right. Cargo stands for China African Resilience Generating Opportunities. And it's to look at the contributions and accomplishments of people of African and African diaspora descent, and what they've contributed towards current world civilization and contributions to where we are today, where normally it's just been looked at their contributions through the transatlantic slave trade. So it is to humanize a story that's been dehumanized and give value to a group of people that have been undervalued in what their contributions are. So that's what Cargo came about. Then there's built around 15 poems which look at individuals that have made contributions, and it runs up until the current day with people, especially in Bristol, who have been appointed to positions of power or voted into positions of power, who would have at the beginning of this journey been classed as Cargo. So it's just showing the contributions and the achievements that have often been omitted from history. So that's really what Cargo was birthed from.
Then we're looking at kind of alternative ways of telling those stories that weren't kind of traditional kind of linear methods. And we were designing a mobile exhibition space that was going to tour the UK, going to port cities in the UK, telling the stories of some of the individuals that feature in Lawrence's poetry. This was going to be an immersive kind of interactive experience within cargo containers, shipping containers. Then obviously COVID hit, and then we kind of pivoted to more kind of digital engagement, and we've launched our series of lessons, Cargo Classroom, which is digital kind of lesson plans for history on our online platform. And as part of that, we're running a series of other projects, film projects, other interactive projects. We're building a game, kind of an interactive game built around history. We're also developed the idea of the People's Platform. So that obviously came about from the Colston statue being taken down, and us knowing that there needed to be a debate in and around what should replace the statue, and there should be a forum for the city to be able to communicate about it, because it's been something that's the Bristol city has hidden from, and this has brought it all to the surface, and I think the whole kind of theme of hidden history is something that really kind of trails the Cargo kind of project, and we're really trying to put the conversation out in the open. So the idea of the People's Platform was an opportunity to do that, and anybody could engage. So the idea was really, it's not about whether you're an artist, it's really about whether you're a civilian and you've got an idea, and you can, you know, we've got, you know, masses of, you know, got a big kind of wad of submissions from schools where they've just drawn down little crayon drawings of what they want to see up there, and then we're able to kind of interpret those ideas in the simplest form and then turn them into a three-dimensional model, and then that three-dimensional model can then be placed in augmented reality on the plinth itself. So the project's in kind of beta stage at the moment. We're working with two big software developers to find exactly the right technology. We've demoed a few types of technology, and we want to just work on a browser-based system that doesn't mean that people have to download an app. If they want to use this software, they can just use it directly in their phone by just hitting a QR code that's going to be at the base of the plinth. We've got a permission for signage now. So we've got signage that will sit at the base of the plinth. Somebody can go up with their phone, scan the code, and then be taken directly to a selection of sculptures that they can see in situ on the plinth. So the idea really mainly is to re-engage the conversation around what should go there and what people want to see. And then also the idea of having multiple ideas around what could go on the plinth. So it's not just, right, here's another alternative. There's multiple alternatives, and you can choose your alternative, and it can be down to your personal kind of interpretation of events and of the situation and of the history. So, I mean, Lawrence, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, all I wanted to add, and yeah, the purpose of doing it like this and just creating it and putting it out there for anybody to access was to take the control of this story out of the hands of the few that have denied illuminating the story of what it is. And that's what the problem was. And even as the statue came down, all of a sudden it's like, yeah, the city's going to have conversations, but you know, they're invited conversations only. Which were going to be for a very few people. They were going to be able to engage, and the general public and everybody else would still be excluded from this place. So part of creating that's why it's called the People's Platform. Let's give the people a chance to voice and put their ideas forward, where in the city of Bristol for a long time, they're the voices that are unheard. And even with it, the question around the People's Platform, the question everyone needs to be asking really is, how was a slave trader statue allowed to be standing in such a prominent forward-facing city in the year of 2020?
Completely. I think that's, yeah. Well, it's why also we were so keen to kind of interview you as part of this, because I think so much of Europe's history is like that, is decided by those people, and just kind of being able to make it more accessible for everybody. So I just so you mentioned that everyone is able to submit artwork to be, so have you specifically tried to involve young people in this process?
Yeah, I mean, we've engaged with schools. We've gone directly to schools and asked them for if they would like to be involved. Schools have come to us, and we know that the nicest ideas have come from the most innocent of minds, really, because they're not kind of tainted with the political kind of network, well, the political kind of baggage that comes with thinking about what could go up there. So yeah, it's been great engaging with kids, and we've done it really predominantly by going through schools, but we're not officially launching until June this year, because we put everything kind of on hold a little bit because of COVID. We just wanted to make sure that we weren't kind of trying to promote something that promoted people kind of congregating and coming together in and around the plinth itself. And we thought that we'd wait to the anniversary of the statue coming down to do the kind of the full launch of the platform. So yeah. I mean, at this stage, we're focusing on software development really to make sure that the actual experience of using the AR is going to be as enjoyable as possible, because we've gone through a few iterations of software that doesn't work as well, and it's not as easy to use. So yeah, that's a big part of it. But we got some great involvement, some really great companies that do some of the most cutting edge AR technology at the moment, and hopefully we're going to be able to get the best product working with them, and also by then we'll have selected a handful of our favorite kind of concepts and then put their stories of the individuals who've created those concepts, and put their story up front and center. So it's as much about the people behind the idea as it is about the idea itself, because I think we always felt that was important, to give them a profile, and it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, one of the ideas came from a young girl, she was 5 years old, who wanted to see, there was a statue, quite a famous statue of a bear that used to be in Bristol, and that bear was taken down a few years ago, and she always used to see that bear and used to love the bear, so she wanted the bear back up on the plinth. So it was nothing kind of political, it was nothing about history. She had no kind of knowledge of Edward Colston. She was 5 years old, but that kind of, you know, that kind of innocence was just a fantastic. It was great. We filmed her and her mum talking about this, her want to see the bear back again, and then we went and filmed her using the AR app and looking at the bear on the plinth. So we want to do that with a selection of people, so when we launch, we've got a few stories that are going to be there immediately, and then hopefully that will pick up steam to kind of collect more stories and get more people engaged.
Completely. Yeah. And I guess it's kind of, that's one of my questions I was going to ask, is how cultural heritage is defined and what it means. And I think that example of the bear is actually, like, that's in her history now, even just seeing it every day when she walks to school or something. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and it was brilliant. She actually said the bears, because the bear was kind of in dazzle camouflage kind of colors. It was a very monotone bear. It was wooden, but it had black and white painting. And she was the bear's black and white, like all of us, you know. I mean, she said that, and as a 5-year-old, so that's her interpretation of her culture and the history that surrounds her. So it's really nice. Yeah, it was not what people were going to expect, I'm sure.
So would you mind if we just talk a little bit more about cultural heritage in Britain, like how you would define it or what it means to you? Do you think it's important? Or?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's the bedrock of, you know, where you want to go in your life, isn't it? You know, you got to know where you've been to know where you're going, right? I mean, that's a cliche, but it is so true. And I think it gives you more stability in knowing who you are. It gives you more knowledge of, you know, past experiences, and also, you know, the DNA of who you are as an individual. So I think it's hugely important. I mean, Lawrence, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. How important is cultural heritage? Wow. It's so important, isn't it? And there's a problem right now because a certain narrative has been blanketed and used for the last few hundred years that is actually unraveling. So there's a whole thing at the moment to try to keep the status quo how it is. We got this thing. It's called what is it at the moment? Cancelling culture. It's cancer culture. Yeah,
it's cancel culture is a kind of different thing to the culture wars, though. It's
but the cancel culture is the thing of saying you can't change the curriculum, you can't put in positive stories about people of African descent because it goes against the narrative we put out that they were savages run around in Africa with no common sense. It suddenly puts into context that the Commonwealth or the British Empire was one of the most destructive forces that went over the planet in the last 500 years. It committed genocide in Australia, North America, the Caribbean. How many places did it commit genocide? Well, it was called colonization and civilizing groups. So yeah, the importance of this being put out there right now, but against the backlash of so many institutions and organizations don't want it told. But I believe, especially with the statue of Colston falling in Bristol, that broke the surface tension of this thing, the control of a few European nations not letting this story get out. So it went global. People all around the world now looking at, actually, this isn't right. So I think the thing for these stories to come forward is so important, and it's going to happen. But it's against a massive backlash of the institutions and the status quo kind of wanting everything to stay how it is. But that,
I mean, the people that control the narrative don't want to lose control.
That moment's gone. That control is relinquished, and it's just important to get these stories out there.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, and do you think so? It's kind of been a turning point. It feels like last year, with these stories being able to be out there more. And do you think that that will continue to change over time?
Honestly,
Thank you. Yeah.
honestly, I think we're getting a lot of window dressing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is there really a willingness to change?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not seeing the investment in the right places.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing the British government complaining about readdressing their curriculum. I see other things coming forward saying, actually, we don't want to do. I don't feel there's an energy for it. I feel there's a lot of trying to put a black face in a white space to make everything look like it's all right for a minute. And once that's been appeased, everything will continue as it is. But there's an opportunity for people to actually force this change through right now, because there's an appetite for it. But the appetite isn't so much from the controlling institutions, it's more from the people. And I think there's a lot of people out there feeling quite aggrieved because they're realizing that they've been lied to.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people have been educated, they won't be educated right. And all of a sudden, like, hang on, I'm allowed educated, I've got these qualifications, but actually something about what I've got isn't quite right. And I need to know what's right so that I can feel comfortable about what I've achieved.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's just a story that's coming from the African diaspora or the African side. I think it's something that everybody kind of feels they want to be part of. But the controlling factors seem to be the ones that don't want it to happen, but the youth do.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel.
Yeah, because I was on the cargo that there's things that are for the curriculum, is that right, that are being taught in schools. So do you think this makes, well, it definitely does make cultural heritage more accessible, but could you maybe talk a bit more about that, about how it...
Alison, you can probably fill in on this.
Cargo Classroom.
Yeah.
So Cargo Classroom is probably our kind of core project at the moment, which is about providing new digital resources for education. And the stories that we're telling with those resources are all attached to poems in the Cargo collection of poetry that Lawrence wrote in 2016. And every one of those poems follows a timeline from ancient history to the modern day. And every poem tells the story of a life of someone of African descent, African diaspora descent, who contributed to society in a way that has been sort of undervalued and has been sort of erased from the conventional telling of history, especially from a Eurocentric perspective. So these were people who really were change makers, were visionary leaders, who were really aware of who they were and what their culture was, and defended themselves and what they deserved. And every one of those lessons looks at the moment in history they lived in through the lens of their life. So there's multimedia resources, including film, original illustrations, as well as loads of source material and text, so that they serve the curriculum really, really well. They're going to hit all of the assessment criteria that teachers need to see. They're going to help young people get their skills and get the knowledge they need to pass their exams. So we worked really closely in collaboration with a team of teachers. We had cycles of testing and reevaluation, made changes, made them even better. And the plan is to release 15 of the lessons. And we released the first package of 4 in January. And they've had a really big impact, and they've attracted a lot of attention from a lot of national organisations, even some organisations based abroad, who really want to help us roll it out further across the country and maybe elsewhere as well. So that's Cargo Classroom.
Mm-hmm. And have you found that people have been more, like students in schools have been more engaged with history because of these resources?
Yeah, well, what we're seeing at the moment, this is the kind of early stages of the rollout, but what we're seeing already is that young people know that they're different, that they are they're telling history in a new way. They're using creative methods, storytelling, poetry, engaging visuals. They're sort of designed in a way that really holds attention and gives, I suppose, due attention and due respect to the stories of those individuals. They're not dry. they're not from a Eurocentric perspective. They're humanized, you know, and it feels like you're getting to know a real person rather than trying to memorize some text about someone you're going to be tested on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's important as well for Lawrence to talk a little bit around the language. I think language is a key part of
for sure.
And delivery, and I think that was something that was important to get across for each of the kind of bits of.
Yeah, for sure.
That's like, yeah. So with the language, some of the like trying to change some of the small pieces out there that cause difference. So the language we're changing is not to use the colorization terms of black or white, because everybody knows that it was a social construct made about just over 500 years ago that too many people have invested in, but it's a lie. So we don't use any colorization through cargo. We don't use the term black or white. We define to people by African or African diaspora descent, European descent. We nationalize them rather than colorize. And then changing the language from like slave, we don't use the term slave, we use enslaved people. The term slave itself was a dehumanized term that a lot of people actually, if they just hear the word slave, they step back, oh, well, they're just slaves. No, actually, they're human beings who were enslaved and they suffered. And as soon as you put enslaved before, people feel that something was taken away from these individuals. So this is all part of humanizing a narrative that is so important to be done. And so that's the things of trying to reverse engineer back to the earliest problems and trying to correct them as working forwards, while empowering and inspiring a narrative by using the individuals in there, that people, when they learn about them and see them, can actually see that, wow, these individuals contributed a lot. And if they're actually of European descent, there's quite a few people in here that probably be saints or would have holidays for them by now. But because the people that they fought against are the people that write the stories. So the easy example to bring someone really modern that we all know about into the fray is to bring Nelson Mandela. When I was growing up at school, Nelson Mandela was a terrorist. Yeah,
the narrative can just be changed.
Well, I seen the thing when Margaret Thatcher put the thing out. I've got it somewhere in my computer, Nelson Mandela's image, and it say he must be hanged. That was 1984. I'm saying this is somebody that was known to be a terrorist, which is actually seen as one of the greatest peacekeepers of all time now. It's just because that what he was fighting against was Europe. So that's the problem with this narrative turning it around, because the perpetrator of the crimes is the person that still is still in power.
So even you're looking to use language to change these narratives, but then the structures and power are still in place, I guess. So yeah.
So that's why we've done that's why we're independent. And that's why a lot of the work we've done has come, we commit our own time, we've had private investment, but very little investment from any public body. And there's certain bodies that when you look at the body of work and what it's actually doing, it's quite remarkable that they're not investing in it. And the only reason that they're not, for myself, is because they want to keep the status quo kind of how it is.
Yeah. So going back to how, so you were saying that it is definitely more, young people are definitely more interested and willing to engage with these, just the way that you're even telling the stories, the way that you're using language and everything.
And one thing that they haven't said, I'll say it, they're beautiful. It's a beautiful package. It's beautiful. The time and effort that has gone to make it be beautiful. So you don't look at it, there's no horror really in there. And that's what's so important. And even with the first release was revolutions, to show people the revolutionaries and just to show what people, and it's like a revolution to whole education is what we're putting out there. A lot of the stuff story in there, people won't, for a little bit, won't even believe the stories are real because they haven't been taught it. It's a bit like the problem with Edward Colston at the moment. A lot of people are like, why did that statue get pulled down? That's right. Why did it get pulled down? Because you haven't been educated to it, all of you. But when you look at the statue, it says on the plaque, you know, one of Bristol's most revered sons and benefactors, but it isn't saying the other part of the story. And this is what we're doing with Cargo. We're bringing forward the African narrative, a story that has been completely omitted, exactly like the badness that, so it's the reverse to the Colston story. With Colston, all his greatness was illuminated and terrible acts were hidden. Africa, it's been the other way around. Anything that's negative about Africa, promote, push forward. Anything that is positive about Africa, let's hide that, and let's actually see if we can make it seem like it was someone European that did it. So that's what we're unraveling. So there's a huge pushback to it. But at the same time, the youth, this is the thing, is that my belief is in the young people and the ones that like all this internet and social media, that's their norm. So they know when they can see something that's not right. Other people that, or they walked into as a library, no, that book was on that shelf in that library, that must be true. It must be true. I read it in that book. Well, now we've got this free access to information globally, like all over the place. Loads of the information I got to learn is because we don't have access just to private libraries anymore. Private libraries are actually online. But before, you had to go to a certain university or a certain school if you were going to get access to a library. They might have this knowledge that could help you find it. But so it's very privileged. So we're trying to remove all barriers, all privilege from the human right of being able to educate yourself. That's what.
Yeah, it's why it's totally free. There's no barrier of engagement. You know, it's all about you know, giving the most amount of people the most amount of opportunity.
I think the other thing I was going to say actually about why these stories are connecting with young people, I think, is because they're all there's something celebratory about them, and they make you proud actually of what, you know, people can achieve in sort of unbelievably adverse circumstances. And the effect is actually it doesn't leave you depressed. It leaves you convinced that change can happen and that change does happen. So I suppose they are they're motivating, I suppose, in a way that so often history lessons aren't.
Yeah.
And they're fascinating people. I mean, that's ultimately it. I mean, the stories are there, and it doesn't take much to kind of make them jump off the page, because they're incredible stories. But also, I mean, one of the points I wanted to make was about tone. And a lot of the time when you get kind of history of this nature being taught, it's always kind of cartoonified, and it's all kind of, it's pitched at a very young age, and it's like, okay, let's make these into little cartoon characters so they can't be taken seriously, or they're going to be easily digestible by young children. And the young children don't want to be talked to like that. They don't want to watch cartoons for information. They want to see real stories, and they want to see characters that feel that they can connect to. So a big part of the project was really trying to develop a visual output that made them these stories feel now, and they are now, they're relevant in so many different ways, but the visual output makes them relevant as well. So the illustration style, the look of the pages, it feels very current, even though we're talking about stories that are many hundreds of years old potentially. So it's trying to, our job was really trying to connect the dots between something that happens many miles away in terms of their understanding or their perception of these people, but actually the relevance is still is so current, and the stories are so fascinating. So it's just really trying to make them feel relevant visually, and make them feel adult, because we're not trying to dumb them down for kids. You know, I think that kids want to be treated like adults. You know, why shouldn't they be? And I think that's what we've tried to do. None of it's a cartoon. It's all just trying to make it as real as possible, and not pull any punches. We're just going to tell the stories as they are. They're grisly and they're gruesome in some respects, but they're also very hugely engaging, and these are fascinating people.
Yeah, real life stories.
Yeah.
Completely. So just in general, to kind of wrap up, what are your plans for the future to keep promoting these ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these stories originally were kind of very Bristol centric. So that's from the southwest, where Lawrence is from, where Alison is at the moment, and where I've lived a lot of my life. And we're very, very focused on that part of the country. But now it's all really about going national. We're working with Historic England to develop a national package, which are going to delve into stories from different regions, and work on kind of, you know, the whole understanding of the history that surrounds you, and how you can investigate that history yourself, and empowering other young people to investigate the history that surrounds them. So it's not necessarily about the narratives we tell them, it's more about teaching them to arm themselves. And I think that's a big part of what we want to try and develop, is more of an ethos and an ethic that just allows the stories to be relatable to everybody's experiences, but for them to find out the information themselves. Lawrence did that himself. Nobody told him where to find this information. He didn't learn in school. He learned by researching himself, going online and spending many hours late at night looking up this information himself. And I think we want to just be able to let other people understand that the information's out there, that they can get it, and how to disseminate the truth from the fiction and the spin and all of those things. I think that's really the next level for us, is to really talk about the kind of how people are educated and how people learn and how people engage with their own history in a broader sense. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you, Alison, you want to add to that? I mean,
no, I think you've covered it. Yeah, it's both. It is just about expanding across the country now, and making sure that we're visible. We're visible, and all teachers and young people know that we exist, really.
Yeah, I mean, we get in contact from all around the world as well. So obviously, we're not restricting ourselves to the UK. We want to be global, but yes, it's a gradual process, and I think it's all exposure really now to what we're trying to do and getting as many eyes on it as possible, because there's no fee. You know, it's all free.
Yeah. So you can find the People's Platform online, and will it be available to everybody to see when it goes live?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can keep you posted and give you updates. We've got your details, People's Platform you can access now and submit ideas. The full launch will be in June, the start of June, and then Cargo Classrooms available right now, and more lessons will be added in the coming months.
Okay.
And if there is, it's possible to stay up to date with what we're doing if people send an email through the website cargomovement.org. There's a way that you can add your email, and then you will receive sort of updates and newsletters from us about what we're doing.
Or just follow us on Instagram as well. Yeah. And there's info there if you want to just kind of put a follow in.